Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we are discussing the module titled Ecological Approaches as a Reaction to the Theory of Unilinear Evolution under the paper Ecological Anthropology, Biological and Cultural Dimensions. Let's see the learning objectives. The course provides introduction information about ecological approaches and unilinear evolution. It includes anthropology and concept of evolution and origin of classical evolutionism. The study of this module also enables the student at postgraduate level to understand the concept of unilinear evolution, global change and major objections and concerns of unilinear evolution. Now let's have a look at the introduction. All animals including men depend on other living creatures for their continued existence. These living creatures constitute resources that are renewable resources that will continue to support the animal that preys on them in perpetuity so long as their capital stock is not eaten into. Social ecology provides a framework for understanding how individuals and their social environments mutually affect each other across their lifespan. Drawing from the idea of Kurt Lewin, a dynamic theory of personality which conceptualized this relationship as an equation that yielded behavior. Bronfenbrenner's The Ecology of Human Development extended the social ecological perspective to account for the complexity of individual developing within embedded systems. Bronfenbrenner specified micro, meso, exo and macro subsystems which constitute the setting and life space within which an individual develops. In this model, each of the subsystems influence the individual and the other subsystems. Moreover, Bronfenbrenner viewed the individual as moving through time and being influenced by his or her developmental and life course experiences. McLeroy et al., which appeared in Health Education Quarterly as an ecological perspective on health promotion programs, further defined the social ecological model for health promotion to depict interrelated systems at the intrapersonal, interpersonal, organizational, community and policy level illustrated as concentric circles. The authors subsequently add other level of analysis including the physical environment and culture. The social ecological model provides a framework for understanding the factors that produce and maintain health and health related issues, allowing identification of promising points of intervention and understanding how social problems are produced and sustained within and across the various subsystems. However, the model has also yielded a growing acknowledgement of the complexity of these systems, highlighting the need for more sophisticated intervention and research methods. Now let's understand the ecological approaches. Ecology and natural resource dynamics. The scientific approach to natural resource dynamics involves the characterization of how the environment influences the abundance and availability of a given resource. From the ecological point of view, the environment is a collection of natural factors including physical, chemical and biological capable of affecting living organisms. Therefore, any factor that can be consumed or used by an organism is defined as a natural resource. The individual environment population system, which is at the heart of the ecological thought, presents a multitude of intertwined interactions that can be grouped into one of the two categories, that is interaction between organism, competition, predation, mutualism, etc., and interactions between organisms and their physical environment, that is the environmental conditions. In essence, ecology deals with the study of complex systems. A complex entity is composed of different elements that interact and combine in a way that may not be obvious at first. The system's complexity is in the eye of the observer. The idea that the concept of complexity is inseparable from the perception is not neutral, but depends on the scale of observation of the system under study. In ecology, there is no scale for observing all phenomena. Conventionally, the hierarchy of scales refer to organizational levels, that is cell, organism, population, community, ecosystem, landscape, biome and biosphere. One of the major issues in ecology is the ability to take into account the multiplicity of scale of study so that each of the phenomena studied at their specific level can be integrated during a phase called scale transfer. Now let us see anthropology and the concept of evolution. Anthropology may be said to have begun with the concept of evolution. To understand this, we must see the social context within which anthropology came up as a discipline. Though many would claim that anthropology truly began with the early Greek philosopher and scientist, it came up as a discipline in its true right only after the Renaissance, about the 1960s. At this time, all the different countries in Europe and England were trading and warring. Due to the essentiality of having raw material and the exigencies of supplying and selling industrial product at cheap rates in bulk, a political economy evolved that took charge of new areas found around the world, took over the government and through it became controller of trade and commerce in these areas. The taking over of the governance was additional to this major enterprise. In the course of this exercise, the Europeans came into contact with each other. They saw other cultures and people and came into contact with religious, cultural and governments differing from their own. In order to understand this strangeness, scholars began to sift through the works of earlier traveler and missionaries. To understand this strangeness and this otherhood of a culture that was aligned to others from the data where inaccuracies inevitably crept in, they had to recourse to their own culture in order to formulate a model. This is the overall model that was ultimately created through the ideas prevalent in Western society at that time. It came to be known in anthropology as classical evolutionism. Let's see the origin of classical evolutionism. The idea of social evolution came from the biological model of evolution. However, the particular kind of approach that was used by social scientists depended more on the other theories that were prevalent at the time. The word evolution comes from the Latin evolver, literally meaning can unrolling. Earlier to Darwin, it was used in the idea of progress and often used in literature and poetry. Lamarck used the word transmutation. Lyell uses the word evolution only once to indicate a progress of speciation. Now let us see evolution. One can then see that cultural evolution began as an evolutionary science. However, before we take a look at what cultural evolution is all about, what does the E word really mean? The origin of the word evolution comes from the Latin evolutio, where E means out of and Volutus means rolled. Aristotle, Leibniz, Emmanuel, Kant and Hegel all used it in the sense of only internal forces that helps in the unfolding of a developmental process, often of a biological organism or type. There was an effect of external forces or the environment. It was used in the same sense by Arthur Lovejoy in 1936. It was first used in biology by Charles Bonnet in 1762. He believed that the developmental stages are performed in the fetus and unfolds over time. This is opposed to the epigeneticists who claim that new forms are created as the fetus grows. This was used in the sense used by Bonnet, also by Mayall, Osborn and Fothergill. Lamarck did not use the word in his major works in 1809. Auguste Comte used it frequently from the 1830, but his definition was very general. Thus, up to the 1850s, the word was uncommon in England. John Stuart Mill used it only once in 1843. Darwin used it in The Origin of Species only in the 6th edition without defining it. Now let's see unilinear evolution. Unilinear evolution, also referred to as classical social evolution, is a 19th century social theory about the evolution of societies and culture. It was composed of many competing theories by various anthropologists who believed that Western culture is the contemporary pinnacle of social evolution. Different social status is aligned in a single line that moves from the most primitive to most civilized. This theory is now generally considered absolute in academic circles. The theory of unilinear evolution claims that societies develop according to one universal order of cultural evolution. The theorists identified the universal evolutional stages and classified different societies as savagery, barbarian and civilization. The 19th century evolutionist unilinear evolution collected data from the missionaries and traders, and they themselves rarely went to the societies that they were analyzing. They organized these second-hand data and applied the general theory to all societies. Since Western societies had the most advanced technology, they put those societies at the highest rank of civilization. The unilinear evolution had two main assumptions that formed the theory. One was psychic unity, a concept that suggests human minds share similar characteristics all over the world. This means that all people and their societies will go through the same process of development. Another underlying assumption was that Western societies are superior to other societies in the world. This assumption was based on the fact that Western societies were dominant because of their military and economic power against technologically simple societies. The 19th century evolutionist or unilinear evolution contributed to anthropology by providing the first systematic method for thinking about and explaining human societies. Their evolutionary theory is insightful with regard to the technological aspect of societies. There is a logical progression from using simple tool to developing complex technology. In this sense, complex societies are more advanced than simple societies. However, this judgment does not necessarily apply to other aspects of societies such as kin system, religions and child rearing customs. Let's see contemporary anthropologists' view about the unilinear evolution. They view it as too simplistic to explain the development of various societies. In general, the unilinear evolutionists relied on racist view of human development which were popular at that time. For example, both Lewis Henry Morgan and Edward Burnett Tyler believed that people in various societies have different level of intelligence. which lead to societal differences. This view of intelligence is no longer valid in contemporary science. Unilinear evolutionism was strongly attacked by historical particularists for being speculative and ethnocentric at the early 20th century. At the same time, its materialist approach and cross-cultural views influenced Marxist anthropology and Neoevolutionist. Edward Burnett Tylor from Great Britain is the founder of cultural anthropology. He was the English scientist. He adapted Charles Darwin's theory of biological evolution to the study of human societies. Tylor's own theory asserted that there is a progressive development of human cultures from the most primitive to the highest stage of civilization. He believed that societies evolve in much the same way as the biological organisms. In developing the concept of survivals, he noted that ancient customs and beliefs often survive in modern culture, although somewhat transformed. Lewis Henry Morgan is a unilinear evolutionist who claimed that societies develop according to one universal order of cultural evolution. Morgan believed in a hierarchy of evolutionary development from savagery to barbarism to civilization. According to Morgan, the crucial distinction between civilized society and earlier societies is private property. He described savage society as communistic, contrasting with the civilized societies which are based on private property. Although Morgan's theory has been criticized for being speculative and ethnocentric, his evolutionary theory influenced the development of anthropology. First, Morgan outlined the importance of the study of kinship system for understanding the social organization. Second, Morgan conducted cross-cultural research that attempted to be systematic and large-scale. Finally, Morgan organized anthropological data and formulated the evolutionary theory rather than simply collecting cultural data. Now let's have a look at historical particularism. Historical particularism claims that each society has its own unique historical development and must be understood based on its own specific cultural and environmental context, especially its historical process. Historical particularists criticized the theory of 19th century evolutionism as non-scientific and claimed themselves to be free from preconceived ideas. They collected a vast amount of first-hand cultural data by conducting ethnographic fieldwork. Based on these raw data, they described particular culture instead of trying to establish the general theories that apply to all societies. The historical particularist valued fieldwork and history as critical method of cultural analysis. At the same time, the anthropologists in this theoretical school had different views on the importance of individual in a society. For example, Franz Boas saw each individual as the basic component of a society. He gathered information from individual informants and considered such data valuable enough for cultural analysis. On the other hand, Alfred Kroeber did not see individual as the fundamental elements of a society. He believed a society evolves according to its own internal laws that do not directly originate from its individuals. He named this cultural aspect superorganic and claimed that a society cannot be explained without considering this impersonal force. Let's have a look at historical particularism. The historical particularism was a dominant theoretical trend in anthropology during the first half of the 20th century. One of the achievements of the historical particularism was that they succeeded in excluding racism from anthropology. The 19th century evolutionists explained cultural similarities and differences by classifying societies into superior and inferior categories. Historical particularists showed that this labeling is based on insufficient evidence and claimed that societies cannot be ranked by the value judgment of researchers. Franz Boas is considered one of the founders of academic anthropology and is also credited with the theory of historical particularism. Until Boas presented historical particularism, many anthropologists believed that societies develop according to one universal order of cultural evolution. This belief, called the unilinear evolution, explained cultural similarities and differences among societies by classifying them into three sequential stages of development: savagery, barbarism, and civilization. Boas criticized this belief as based on insufficient evidences. For example, unilinear evolution claims that matrilineal kin system preceded patrilineal kin system and that religion based on animism developed before polytheistic religion. Boas argued that this ordering is merely an assumption because there is no historical evidence or ways to demonstrate its validity. He also criticized unilinear evolution for its method of gathering and organizing data. At that time, many anthropologists relied on missionaries or traders for data collection, and anthropologists themselves rarely went to the societies that they were analyzing. Boas argued that those armchair anthropologists organized that second-hand data in unsystematic manner to fit their preconceived ideas. Based on his principle that cultural theories should be derived from concrete ethnographic data, Boas strongly advocated fieldwork. He developed the method of participant observation as a basic research strategy of ethnographic fieldwork. Based on this method, Boas collected a vast amount of first-hand cultural data from Native American tribes in the United States. Using detailed ethnographic studies, he argued that a society is understandable only in its own specific cultural context, especially its historical process. Boas did not deny the existence of general laws on human behavior and developed the position that those laws could be discovered from the understanding of a specific society. In later years, Boas became skeptical about the possibility of deriving cultural laws because he realized that cultural phenomena are too complex. Besides presenting the theory of historical particularism, Boas left a tremendous impact on the development of anthropology. By claiming that societies cannot be ranked by the degree of savagery, barbarity, or civility, Boas called for an end of ethnocentrism in anthropology. Also, because of his influence, anthropologists began to do ethnological fieldwork to gather sound evidences. His position that culture must be understood in its own context has been passed on to anthropologists as a basic approach to cultural analysis. Now, let us see Neoevolutionism overview. The theory of Neoevolutionism explained how culture develops by giving general principles of its evolutionary process. The theory of cultural evolution was originally established in 19th century. However, this 19th century evolutionism was dismissed by the historical particularists as unscientific in early 20th century. Therefore, the topic of cultural evolution had been avoided by many anthropologists until Neoevolutionism emerged in 1930s. In other words, it was the neo-evolutionary thinkers who brought back evolutionary thought and developed it to be acceptable to contemporary anthropology. The main difference between neo-evolutionism and 19th century evolutionism is whether they are empirical or not. while 19th century evolutionism used value judgment and assumption for interpreting data, the new one relied on measurable information for analyzing the process of cultural evolution. The neo-evolutionary thought also gave some kind of common ground for cross-cultural analysis. Largely through their efforts, evolutionary theory was again generally accepted among anthropologists by the late 1960s. Now let's see global change. Later critics observed that this assumption of firmly bounded societies was proposed precisely at the time when European powers were colonizing non-Western societies and was thus self-serving. Many anthropologists and social theorists now consider unilinear cultural and social evolution a Western myth seldom based on solid empirical grounds. Critical theorists argue that notions of social evolution are simply justification for power by the elites of society. Finally, the devastating World War that occurred between 1914 and 1945 crippled Europe's self-confidence. After millions of deaths, genocides and the destruction of Europe's industrial infrastructure, the idea of progress seemed dubious at best. Let's have a look at the major objection and concern. Thus, modern socio-cultural evolutionism rejects most of the classical unilinear evolutionism due to various theoretical problems. Number one, the theory was deeply ethnocentric. It makes heavy value judgment on different societies, with Western civilization seen as the most valuable. Number two, it assumed all culture follow the same path of progression and have the same goals. Number three, it equated civilization with material culture, that is technology, cities, etc. It equated evolution with progress or fitness based on deep misunderstanding of evolutionary theory. Number 5, it is contradicted by evidence, some that not all supposedly primitive societies are arguably more peaceful and equitable, democratic than many other modern societies. Because social evolution was posited as a scientific theory, it was often used to support unjust and often racist social practices, particularly colonialism, slavery and the unequal economic conditions present within the industrialized Europe. Thus, classical evolutionism or unilinear evolutionism may be summed up as culture or society proceeds through a single line of development. It has set stages of similar content for all people. However, the pace of development varies from society to society. Though Morgan and Tyler believed in some diffusion having taken place, but the unilinear aspect was seen to be very strong. The presence of survival or vestigial patterns from the past which had lost their function but continued to be used by the society were taken to be proof that society had gone through the earlier stages proposed. Hence, Morgan saw matrilineality as a survival that preceded patrilineality. The methodology used in this period was called the comparative method. Social traits were compared to see which stage of evolution it belonged to. Thus, living tribal people became the hallmark of earlier stages of human existence. More or less, all of the classical evolutionists believed in some form of social Darwinism. As a result, since some were more fitted than others to survive, it justified imperialism and colonialism. Now, let's summarize the module. We have learned that all animals, including men, depend on other living creatures for their continued existence. Bronfenbrenner, the ecology of human development, extended the social ecological perspective to account for the complexity of individual developing within embedded system. The social ecological model provides a framework for the understanding the factors that produce and maintain health and health-related issues. The scientific approach to natural resource dynamics involves the characterization of how the environment influences the abundance and availability of a given resource. The individual environment population system, which is at the heart of ecological thought, ecology deals with the study of complex system. The idea that the concept of complexity is inseparable from the perception is not neutral but depends on the scale of observation of the system under study. Anthropology may be said to have begun with the concept of evolution. The idea of social evolution came from the biological model of evolution. One can then see that cultural evolution began as an evolutionary science. Unilinear evolution, also referred to as classical social evolution, is a 19th century social theory about the evolution of societies and culture. The theory of unilinear evolution claims that societies develop according to the one universal order of cultural evolution. The unilinear evolution had two main assumptions that form the theory. The unilinear evolution contributed to anthropology by providing the first systematic method for thinking about and explaining human societies. Both Lewis Henry Morgan and Edward Burnett Tylor believed that people in various societies have different levels of intelligence, which leads to societal differences. The founder of cultural anthropology was the English scientist Edward Burnett Tylor. Lewis Henry Morgan is a unilinear evolutionist who claimed that societies develop according to one universal order of cultural evolution. Historical particularists criticized the theory of 19th century evolutionism as non-scientific and claimed themselves to be free from preconceived ideas. Historical particularism was a dominant theoretical trend in anthropology during the first half of the 20th century. Franz Boas is considered to be the founder of academic anthropology and is also credited with the theory of historical particularism. Boas argued that those armchair anthropologists organized that second-hand data in unsystematic manner to fit their preconceived ideas. The theory of Neoevolutionism explained how culture developed by giving general principle of its evolutionary process. The main difference between Neoevolutionism and 19th century evolutionism is whether they are empirical or not. Modern socio-cultural evolutionism rejects most of the classical unilinear evolutionism due to various theoretical problems. Thank you.